I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. You like to move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it.
The warm-up sequence will start with a sprint or jog over both 30 as well as 15 yards. Progress then onto a sprint back pedal, ensuring that the weight's over the front side at all times. Side shuffle, avoid clicking the heels, keep the head nice and steady. Body position stays at the same height throughout, no crossing of the midline. Karaoke's for a young player, we want to ensure that the arms remain at a 30-degree position in front of the body, as steady as possible, emphasis on torso rotation. High knee ballistic walking, focusing on balance, you want to stay on the balls of the feet each time. Take a couple of steps in between, tuck the knee upwards. Can be done without the knee tuck. Emphasis on consistent body position. Second part is the backward step over. Center of mass should stay between the base of support at all times. This is quite difficult to do without kind of flaring and opening up your hips. The goal here is to stay in an athletic position at all times and rotate the hips up and out with each repetition. The hamstring scoop, just sort of a priming exercise for the hamstrings themselves. Just hinge at the hips, toes up, scoop either side of that leg. Shoulders stay nice and straight. Back position does not arch, no slouching of the shoulders. Same thing will be repeated once they're around the cone in the opposite direction. Please note this is not shown to scale. This can be done over 10 yards. Right now the grid's set up at about somewhere in between 10 and 15 yards, just for video purposes. I stay forward throughout. Let's get the side to side groin stretch going. So what's important is that the stride is nice and big, but the player should stay in a balanced athletic position at all times. Our player on screen at the moment is quite tall. I would in essence even open that stride a little bit further than this, but for filming purposes, just to get enough repetition in, I asked him to just make sure that he keeps everything nice and steady and not overexerting on any of the movements. Just while we have a moment, the warm-up and stretch should be done at about 70 to 75% intensity. Everything is being done slowly and deliberately just for video and educational purposes. Depending on the fitness level of your team, you can adjust this accordingly. All right, we go on to the alternate leg swings. You want to keep the movements in a straight line. Loop around the cone, do the same thing coming back. What's really important here is that the leg is controlled the same way on the way up as well as coming down. No heavy feet. Lunge with a twist, you want a natural stride length. You want to twist across the front side with each repetition, simulating some anti-rotation as well as a few different planes of movement at the same time that the body will be having to deal with in game situations. On the way back, we reverse the lunge with an upward reach. Ensure that there's no hyperextension in the lumbar spine. Here we're just trying to get extended out front. A lot of the same kind of body position and motion will happen when executing a throw. Just one more little top up would be to do some high knees. I would be a little bit more dynamic with my actions, and then on the way back, do some butt kicks. All right, heart rate should be up nicely now. We walk them out into lines. And we start down at the bottom with some calf pumps. Calf pump progresses into a calf stretch where you simply just hold the heel as close to the ground as possible. Catch a squat with a little bit of a sideways pivot, just getting the head of the femur nice and loose in the pelvis. We then add the thoracic rotation as well, sort of like a windmill type action, following your hand with your eyes whilst maintaining that low body position. Notice how he doesn't do this with ease. You're going to see quite a few mistakes during the warm-up and stretch itself, just to help you guys also identify what you're going to be up against with your players. They're not all going to be very accomplished movers. All right, after the sway, we get into the low hamstring stretch. Looks a little bit awkward for him to be down in that body position, but essentially just spending some time in an elongated deep squat with the hamstring being stretched at the same time. Here we're going to do some hip sit backs. This will open up the pelvis nicely, getting a nice adductor stretch on the inner thigh. Key here is body position. Once again, you want to keep the shoulders square, head steady, looking directly in front of you with your back nice and straight. If they can keep the foot flat down, like is depicted in the video here, the outstretched foot, that'll work on ankle mobility at the same time. But if not, the instep or inside of the foot is good enough to engage the inner thigh. All right, we're doing some leg swings on the spot here. I would normally double up the leg swing on the spot with a multi-directional lunge. So I would do some forward lunges, some backward lunges, some diagonal ones, and then move on to the torso rotation. So we'll start the torso rotation with no step. Does this a bit awkwardly, but then we'll progress to adding the toe tap. And then we change the body angle and we work our way down into a windmill position, combining those two actions. Really just getting that separation between the lower half and the upper half and getting around as far as possible at all times in a nice, strong athletic position. Move on into a lat stretch. Remember that all of these will be done one after the other, so the heart rates are nice and steady throughout. So you're going to pace yourself in terms of the intensity of the warm-up and stretch relative to what your team can handle. And then we get into the shoulder girdle. So we do double arm swings, moving our way into alternate arm swings. The time is just a guide as to how long each one is done for. We do some up downs, palms down, fly away, and then palms up, always at a scapular plane position, slightly in front of the body. Here from side on, you'll be able to get a lot of feedback in terms of body position. You can notice his lower back's arched a little bit. I'd have him hinge his hips a little bit more. Arm circles forward, starting small, working your way into full range of movement. And then we'll go palms up and do the same thing in reverse. So we do arm circles backward. We do some back slaps or overs and unders. Once again, pay close attention to the body position in the lower half. Make sure they don't start getting into too much of an upright position. Do some scarecrows here, some internal and external rotation. Once again, ensuring consistency in body position. A couple of overhead presses just to get extended away from the ground. And then we do some thoracic extensions in the form of a nice reach. Key thing here, I'll show you side on in a little bit, is that the lower back doesn't arch. I prefer the arms to stay locked out throughout. You notice his are slightly bent at the elbow. Back is a bit more arched than I'd like to see that in that overhead position. I'd have him lean slightly further forward into the hinge and then have his arms reach up at a 45-degree angle. We do some screwdrivers just to round things out. Palms down, palms up, palms down, palms up, leading with the thumb. The movement comes from the shoulder itself, Notice he doesn't have the same proprioception on his left arm. It's a little bit lower than his throwing arm is. You have to pick up these little variances player by player. And we get into the forearm. So fingers pointing up towards the heavens and then down towards the grass, just to get the wrist and the forearm nice and loose, and do the same on the other side. Lastly, get into the upper traps. So two versions of the stretch here. It's ear to shoulder and then diagonally across with the chin towards the armpit. So that's position one. Check body position. He's leaning slightly to the side. I'd coach him out of that. And then down towards the armpit. All right, now we want to get the heart rate back up again. Everything should be nice and loose. We do the sprint this time over 30 yards, so the full size of the grid. Move on into some shuffle goes, some shuffle switches, which is simply just shuffling halfway and then switching in stride. Obviously, over 30 yards, you would change halfway, half base distance. Similarly, the forward stride and turn in stride. Here's the shuffle and fielding the ground ball. I'm not too happy with the body position each time coming up very high. I would stay a little bit lower in the shuffle throughout, but you get the idea. We then do some shuffle bounding with the arm swing, really encouraging lateral distance, bit of coordination, both arms really opening up the chest, getting as much distance sideways as possible. We then do the sprint and turn in stride again, into some bounding runs. Goal here is height, not forward distance. It's obviously bearing in mind he's trying to do this for demo purposes. We do some diagonal bounding, 45-degree angle on the way forward, and then do the same thing in reverse, coming back. We then do some more shuffle goes just to round things out again. Straight steel, a couple of each of those, over 30 yards, and then the up tall and fall, which is really getting tall, establish a 45-degree angle, and round things out before the throwing program starts.
I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. You like to move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it.